Hello, 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 everyone. It's your main man, Darren L. Palmer, Chief Book Officer of Self-Publishing 30 Days. I'm excited to be with you today. Hey, we have a special edition today. I got my girl Erica, I got my girl Sarah today. We're representing, shout out to our guy Corey Camp. Hopefully he's having a smooth transition from the CA, California to Texas. We're going to
Yeah.
give him a good kiss to Bevo and whatnot down there in Austin to break him in real good. But this is a celebration for those who have been able to accomplish a great feat by becoming authors with Forever Athlete today. So I'm going to get out the way and allow for the ladies to be able to share about themselves. So I'm going to pass it around. Sarah, I'm going to pass it to you, and then to you, Erica, if you don't mind, just share your name and a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Sarah Neal, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I am also known as the skating yogi. I coach figure skating, have coached for over 20 years, been involved in the sport for over 40 years, had students compete nationally, internationally, and even coached in Spain for a while, and also teach Spanish at the university level. And I recently, as a couple years ago, became a yoga instructor just because I felt that there was a huge need in the sport world and the skating world specifically to help heal some decades old patterns and thought processes. And I felt like yoga was the best way to help people heal and to help move our sport forward so it could continue to thrive. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. We're going to go to you, Erica. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Love that. Yeah, so my name is Erica Fay. I am in Chicago, Illinois, which is where I've spent the majority of my life. And I played water polo at Purdue, and when it was ending, I knew it was going to come to an end because when I was playing, there was no Olympic sport of women's water polo. We actually signed petitions to try to get one going, and now women's water polo is an Olympic sport, so that's great. But yeah, so I kind of knew that my sport was coming to an end, and I automatically decided that I was going to be directing my physical energy into something else. So that's kind of what led me into doing endurance sports. So I started marathoning and doing triathlons and Ironman triathlons and stuff like that. But on my professional side, I have been a licensed marriage and family therapist for over 20 years. And when I was working in my private practice, I was working with a number of athletes, and I started to notice that there was a gap between kind of the services that they felt comfortable accessing, the services they knew about, and also just the transition for each and every one of the athletes that I saw. Some of them were still competing. It just seemed like there was a gap that needed to be bridged. And so that's actually what led me to get certified as a coach and to do what I'm doing now, which is working with athletes, both on the performance side and on the transition side. But because of my background as a marriage and family therapist, mental skills are kind of my jam. So we do a lot with that. And also just bringing in the idea and the understanding and really grounding that concept that all of us are way more than what we do. And I think for athletes, that can be challenging. So that, and then when I had the opportunity to collaborate with Sarah and Corey and all of the other authors for Forever Athlete, I hopped on it because I thought it would be a really great way to, serve and just support athletes by means of people sharing their stories. So I was really happy to be involved.
Okay, well, I just want to put a disclaimer out there because I want you all to be able to tell the truth and shame the devil a little bit. Because you put some numbers out there, and then for you all to be past 28 years old, well, I think I need to retract some of those statements. But one of the things that I want to bring up that you all shared just in a little bit about yourself is I want to go right into this. What is the core to allowing you all to operate and be selfless? I want to dive into that. What's that angle for you? Because I'm hearing that and the dialogue that both of you are sharing. Like Sarah, you brought this up, but there's some other people that see some things, but they don't address it. But you all didn't only just observe something going on that you thought needed to have the right or proper attention to it to help others, but you move forward. So I want to hear it, if you don't mind, Sarah. Could you share where did they come from you, or basically what gave you the courage to take action? And then I would like to hear your take too, Erica, if you didn't mind.
Mhm.
Well, you're very generous, first of all. I don't know that my moving into this space was selfless. It was a little bit more self-preservation. I was so burnt out from life and being in sports for life and just my own personal perfectionism. And, Erica, it's interesting that you are in endurance sports, because when I first got married, I thought I'm going to give myself a break. And I didn't get married till I was almost 40. And then my husband had a 7-year-old. And so it just was a lot. And I thought, well, I'm going to take some time for myself and I'm going to do an Ironman.
Nice.
The worst possible thing I could have done for my personality and my body. I mean, I ended up so ill that I could not practice yoga for 6 months. Like, that's how much
Wow.
it was bad. And that kind of started the tipping point, right? And I just started to realize that maybe not everyone is built for competition. And that toxic environments do take a toll on your nervous system and on your body. And so with that in mind, I was just doing a whole lot of a deep dive into skating and where some of the thought patterns come from in competitive sports and what makes certain sports more harmful for individuals than others, and why that is, and trying to determine where that came from. But within that, I knew that for me, the most powerful healer was the yoga, just because it helped me turn inward and be able to do that reflection, right? It's not independent of therapy. It's not independent of all the other tools. But for me, that was the easiest, the most powerful way to get back into my body and listen and learn to listen instead of hearing everything going on around me, which was influencing my inability to find myself. And so when starting that yoga journey, then I became a certified yoga teacher just because I wanted to deepen my practice. And my teachers just kept encouraging me, said, you need to teach, you need to teach. Like, you are a teacher, you've taught your entire life, you need to teach yoga too. And I thought, well, I'm only going to teach my students, like I'm my skaters. I'm just going to bring this into skating. And then the more I started kind of getting into that space, and I built an online membership for skaters to try to connect different skaters to reframe how they were seeing the sport, so they could maybe follow their own journey instead of the traditional path of intense early specializing competition. And within that, then I kind of decided maybe this was a story that needed to be told, and that there were so many other connecting factors to other sports as well. So that's how I ended up connecting with Corey and getting involved in this Forever Athlete project.
Sarah, right there, before we go to Erica, I want to bring this up, and I'm glad for you giving us clarity on that. For those who are listening to this, keep this in mind. Your opportunity can show up with you being unaware of it. Your opportunity doesn't come all the time with you with a 5 and 10-year plan. I'm not saying don't have a plan, but it's some things just because of necessity that you can do that will allow for you to self-preserve yourself, but also understand, like, wait a minute, if this was able to help me, surely somebody else out of the 8.5 billion people, quote unquote, that they say that's out there in the world. So don't think that you got to reinvent the wheel all the time. There is a group of people, there is your tribe out there that could benefit from some of the same regimen that is beneficial for you. So don't down yourself, or don't think that you have to create the next app, or you got to compete with Jeff Bezos or whatnot, or Elon Musk to go to space for you to have that next great aha moment or that epiphany. Take what Sarah has or whatnot, and then it was a progression. It wasn't all at one time. It didn't just hit, okay, well, let me do this. And also the power of team, having others pour into you to see something that you don't see. So it was others who was like, hey, you got this great, unique talent of teaching. Why don't you share that? So that wasn't coming from Sarah. Even with us here at Self-Publishing 30 Days, me being the founder, I can't take credit for that because I didn't even want to do publishing. I recruited people out of my face. It was a selfish act on me. I've repented. So don't throw rocks at me. But it opened up doors. But it was other people who shared that with me, not me. But it progressed. And so if you don't mind, Erica, can you share a little bit too about you and your progression and you getting into the space and after the Purdue and picking yourself up and then also realizing this was beneficial to me. How can I transition and help people in other spaces, if you don't mind?
Of course. Yeah. And I definitely can relate to Sarah in terms of the perfectionism. So, and I don't know if that's just, I work with a lot of athletes and I see that same thread in many of them. So I don't know if that's an athlete thing. Well, I mean, I know it's not just an athlete thing, but I definitely have to catch myself with that. I consider myself like recovering from perfectionism. And so what Sarah was talking about, and especially like with Ironman and stuff like that, like for me, my experience was a little bit different in that when I was younger, and I still have asthma, but it was really, really, really bad when I was a kid. So I was like hospitalized, not just going to the ER, but like inpatient hospitalization a ton. And one of the things that I really feel like gave me my freedom was sports. My parents like pushed me into, trying all kinds of different sports. And like, my mom, other kids would like get a gym note to not run the mile because they had asthma. And like, my parents would be like, go run it, So like, I felt like it really, I mean, sometimes I would wind up in the hospital afterwards, but like what wound up happening was I started to realize like, well, I actually can increase my lung capacity. And like, so my relationship with, and I didn't actually talk about this in my chapter, but when I'm reflecting on it, my relationship with like being active and being an athlete, like to me, it gave me kind of my life. So when water polo ended for me, I knew like I need, for my well-being, for my lungs, for my health, like I need to continue to do something. And that's what led me to endurance sports. But as far as like the selflessness, I don't know, I don't know about that either. Cause like, they always say that like, physician heal thyself. And I think therapists are no exception. Like we get into the field because we want to heal our own wounds too. And so then, when working with athletes, I didn't even realize that was kind of the demographic that I loved working with. And kind of like when you're on the right path, the universe supports you, so I was getting these referrals. And then that's what led to this coaching certification and what I'm doing now. But I just really, one of the things that gets me up in the morning, and I think most people are like this, when you feel like you're contributing to something or like helping somebody, it's really, there's like an energy about that. And so, for me, that's always been really like motivating. In becoming a therapist, I loved relationships. I loved hearing about my friends' relationships. I wanted to help people in relationship. So then like this was kind of a natural progression to move on over to the coaching side and really support people in realizing that they are far much more than anything that they do, but also how, working with the power of the mind can really transform not only your experience of your performance, but your experience of your life. And then also, as we all have to at some point transition from some level of sport, having that kind of foundation of just the awareness and the knowing that you're far greater than anything you do, and then knowing that a new dream can be birthed and all of that. So that's the kind of stuff that like jazzes me up and I get really excited about helping people with.
Hey, that's amazing, Erica. And you know, for those who are out there, and I mean, Erica brought this up when she was sharing. I want you all to focus on the P's. And what I mean by the P's is whenever you're operating in purpose, then it leads to passion. So yeah, you're putting in work, but it doesn't seem like work because it fuels you. That's what Erica brought up, where it gets you out of bed because you're operating in purpose and you're aligning with the universe and stars align, so to speak. But it also leads to profit because wherever you have enough positive impact, it intersects with income. So when you're serving people, you're adding that value, the law of reciprocity take place. So even though you might came in it like, I didn't really expect this, but I'm helping people, their lives are being transformed, it's being for the better, it also helps you. So even with me doing this interview today, so even though I might be here to be a host, I'm being encouraged by this today. I'm being helped by this today. So that's the process of whatnot that we have when we work together or whatnot and being able to benefit others, you benefit as well. I remember going to, and I know you appreciate this, Sarah, Erica, and Cody, you understand this. I call myself going to help some people at a senior living facility. And I was like, oh, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, I'm gonna donate some stuff. Yeah, I'm from Texas. If you hear the Southern drawl like Tim McGraw or whatnot, so I'm on my high horse. Shout out to Sarah in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm on my high horse and whatnot, and so I'm going in like I'm just to help people. I'm here to serve. And by the time I heard from some of those people who were there, some of the seniors there, and their stories and amazing lives that they had lived, and their kids and grandkids, some had great grandkids. I walked out of there like, man, where do I donate? Where the cash out? Where's the Givelify out? Where's the Zelle at? Let me donate something here because, man, my life has been impacted like I've been in a mastermind. And so I understand it. And I want those who are listening to know you can benefit others and you can benefit too. But if you have the right heart, it'll lead you down the right road. And with that being said, Cody, man, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're glad to have you. If you don't mind, I want to give you the opportunity, Cody, to share your name, man, and share a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, so for those that obviously don't know me, Cody Allen, I am a washed up football player, I guess is the best way to put it. But even more so than that, I'm somebody that started a couple companies in the last 6 years or so. And I truly believe, obviously, based on this book, that a lot of the qualities that have driven or given me the opportunity to be successful derive from my background in athletics. So I don't know. I got into the digital space just because I knew that that was going to be something that was going to continue to take off, right? And reaching people, when we always talk about making an impact, you can obviously start within your family, your friends, and your community, and it continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger and large scale. The easiest way to do that now is online. There's so much that we've done with our company that we feel like we've made an impact in small businesses' lives, right? And then individuals' lives. And so when I started to look at myself as like a brand, I thought, how could I take some of the stuff that I've learned over the last 31 years and convey in a message that is easily digestible by the general population, if you will. And that was partially writing this book, partially creating content around who I was as an individual and these sort of things. So yeah, that's kind of like how I am sitting on this screen right now. That's how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cody, for sharing that. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. Cody, I'm gonna throw it back to you. It's one thing to be the athlete. I think I think it's recycling, brother. You're not washed up, you're getting better with time like fine wine. And so you was able to transition and go into another area and use that expertise. But it's one thing to transition from being an athlete to going into business to helping others. But if you don't mind, share with us, why did you take this opportunity to be an author? Because you've already had some success. You didn't have to do it. So there are people out there who think, well, I've already had some success, or I already played that. I don't think I have to be an author. But what was that why for you that you took advantage of this opportunity? And we're going to pass it around to Erica and then to Sarah.
So right out the gate, I had the opportunity to coach my former high school, my alma mater, in 2020 in that abbreviated season, because I reached out to the coach who was coaching there when I played 10 years ago. And I was like, hey, I've gone through some of the experiences as a high school recruit, college player, a lot of things that the kids there are aspiring to or were aspiring to achieve. I had accomplished them in some capacity, right? So I was like, hey, let me give back to the community that gave me so much. And so I spent 4 months driving 2 hours each way for practices, and games, obviously, for this high school team, right? And at the end of the season, I was like, that was very taxing, but it was one of the most fulfilling things that I had done in a long time, right? Coaching isn't something that it's not something that, I love the game of football itself, but even more so than that, I love touching that age group. And that was the first time that I was able to really reach them. So I was like, all right, cool. How can I selfishly feel that way again? How can I feel like I'm helping that age group? How can I convey a message, something that is indelible almost? And then, so I started my podcast, and I was like, all right, how can I take the things I've learned, put them online, whatever it might be? And then Corey came to me with this opportunity, and it's easy to reach high schoolers and young college kids on social media, but there are a lot of people who are still, myself included, finding their way 35 plus, right? That is, my mom doesn't know my mom doesn't even know what I do for work. My mom read the books, doesn't even know what I do for work. But there are a lot of people that prefer paperback. There are a lot of people who are avid readers, a lot of people in our space, whether they be whatever age might be. And it is so saturated online that a lot of times you see the same stuff regurgitated over and over and over. So when this opportunity for the book came, and when it came out to be co-authored, I was like, this is one, a good stepping stone to getting into sort of any sort of being an author. But then number two, it provides more value than just me writing a book by myself, because it is different people from different walks of life that have different experiences that are talking about essentially the same thing, right? And that is the number one thing when you're talking about creating any sort of message, is that it needs to be relatable, right? So I don't care who you are, someone's going to anybody could pick up this book, and someone is going to be able to relate to one of the chapters in there, right? It's not a bunch of dudes talking about football, a bunch of guys talking about track, a bunch of women talking about swimming. There are athletes from all different walks of life that have had different experiences, different successes, different failures, but it's all the same core concept. So when this came around, I was like, this is perfect for, especially my first experience being any sort of author.
Man, come on now. Cody coming with the smoke. And like Corey had talked about this too as well, that's the amazing thing. You have people literally from different parts of the world, not just in the US, that's a part of this book. And so you think about that it can be somebody in Germany reading this book. Like you wasn't even setting out to do that. So you might selfishly did it to be able to be beneficial, to help out someone, but you got someone in a different country or whatnot. They might be on a base or whatnot with a parent or whatnot, and able to pick this up, or from a different country and pass it on to a group that they're a part of. So let's thank you, Cody, for that. Erica, let's hear from you.
Yeah, similar to Cody. I felt like I was kind of getting nudges from all over the place to write a book. And I was like, I don't really want to write a book. So when I had the opportunity to collaborate with people, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Yeah. And exactly what Cody was saying, I was, really encouraged by the idea that even if someone isn't resonating with my chapter, they'll maybe, really be touched by someone else's story. So that was another thing that was really appealing to me. And, just the idea that I kind of, when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, I got to get all this content out there. It's good. So I did this free 4-week class. And it was again, referring to the perfectionism and the overdrive, I burned myself out on that. That was not sustainable. And I was operating at a level that, plus I had a 1-year-old at the time. So I was just I need to scale it back, but how can I make sure that I'm still serving in a way that can touch people that I might not even know? And that was one of the things that was really, really exciting to me about participating in this project, because I feel like many people can resonate with, like Cody said, like every single person's story in the book. So that always just feels really good to me. Is like, as many people as we can serve, then, that's like what I'm really passionate about. Like, let's just get good stuff out there and let people, make it accessible, which a book is. And so, yeah, so that was really the main thing, is just like more content, more good stuff, more support for people that we may not even know.
Man, Erica, bring on the pressure. Hey, the 1-year-old, but I'm creating content like a mad woman or mad man. Come on now. Hey, I got to step my game up. I don't know about you all. I thought I had a great workout today, but after just hearing what Erica just said, she got the courses going. 1-year-old, man, talking about.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. It's not for the faint of heart, man.
No.
So step it up. So those of you out there who whining, just hear Erica's story and make you look at life differently or whatnot. It's all about perspective. That creates your reality. So Sarah, let's hear from you.
Well, first I want to say it's not about the competition. That's my whole message. To move away from competition into connection. It's not about the competition. So yeah, Cody and Erica both said pretty much everything that I have in mind too. I was a writing major in college and always have had the bug to want to write. I didn't write for a long time just because I was busy building a skating organization and having national competitors, and then, having a child, and it just was not something on my radar for a while. But I have had I kind of go into it a little bit in my chapter, but I have had some pretty interesting experiences, not necessarily involved with skating. And I have been encouraged many, many times by people to write those experiences. So in the chapter, I went a little bit into some of that and kind of tied it into my journey as an athlete. But that was kind of one of the nudges of wanting to get that story on paper. But like Erica and Cody both said, it's about wanting to get the story out there, because I feel like there's so many different stories in this book that something will resonate with everyone that reads it. Might not be my chapter, it might not be Cody's or Erica's, but there's something in there. And for me, when I was, as I've kind of been going through this journey of wanting to reach out to other athletes and not just skaters, is that I didn't really have any experience in other sports. And so I didn't truly understand how many similarities there are between, a high achieving athlete in, say, water polo or football or swimming and skating. There are some differences, but there are so many similarities. And Erica, you mentioned a while ago, the perfectionism, right? So perfectionism is one. I read this really amazing book a few months ago. I think the author's name is, I can't remember her name, but the book is called Skewed to the Right. And you all may have seen it on social, but she did these different case studies, and she talks about how among elite athletes, certain personality characteristics are skewed to the right of the bell curve. Things like perfectionism, obsessiveness, right? Focus, which in sports can help you, but at what point does it become a detriment to your mental health, right? And then many elite athletes, the majority, are skewed to the left of the bell curve in areas like self-esteem, the need to seek outside validation. And so the current mental health crisis that we keep hearing about in sport over the past year has to do with that combination. And at what point do you say that could be just our personal characteristics, but it also could be the environment of the sports that's encouraging those characteristics? And so, so being a part of this larger athlete community for me has been very eye-opening, and has made me realize that it's not just a skating thing. It's not just a personal thing, that it's a much more universal situation. And that can make, just make us all feel more connected.
That's amazing. And, you know, Sarah, going back to what you brought up earlier, and I think that this is the prime example of this, is I have a saying, collaboration over competition. And so in our core value at the company is creating win-wins. So everyone has to win. You know, if someone is a client and they're a jerk, your money is no good here. You know, that motto of the client is always right. No, it's not here. Like, if you're going to treat people like crap, then your funds are not needed, you know. And it's been appalling to some people, you know, but also understanding great-minded people like you all being able to come together on this particular project and not allowing ego or pride to get in the way. To be able to say, hey, I've heard this from all of you. Hey, it's going to be better because we have more people involved. Now, it's some other people that wouldn't want to be a part of the project because they want to have it, excuse me, me. I'm sorry, I had a moment of whatnot. Y'all didn't know I was versatile about how I was able to blow those notes. But with that being said, while I was channeling my inner John Legend, a lot of people would miss out on those opportunities because they don't understand teamwork. So that's another component of a positive that comes from sports, is understanding teamwork, that we can get this done together, that it doesn't have to just be all about me. Now, don't get me wrong, it's some individualism in certain sports or whatnot, but at the same time, we do get that regardless of what sport it is, of the power, even if it's your coach or, you know, the trainer that you have, you understand, or those parents or guardians or whoever it was that took you to the games and got you to practice. You know, you didn't arrive to this point or whatever apex that you reach by yourself. And so I want to dive into this. Let's talk about a little bit. I'm gonna lead Sarah to last about this, but well, because of her writing and the background she come from. But let's start with Erica, then Cody, and then Sarah. Let's talk about how are you all able to create the content for this event, for this book. So was it at night? Did you transcribe it? How did you, you know, get the content created? What were some of the hacks and some of the things you used to create the content?
Well, so just to kind of piggyback on something that you said about competition too, it just reminds me, yesterday I was reading something. It was the mental skills coach for the Tampa Bay Rays, I believe. And he was talking about competition and how the word compete is derived from the Latin word, and I'm going to butcher it, like competare or something like that. And it has actually, what it means is to come together. And so that's really interesting. And one of the things that he was saying about that was like, even if you're, obviously everyone in sports has an opponent, but like, even if you start to look at that as like, you know, you're competing with your personal best. So like you're making yourself better. So it's almost like you're both sharpening each other's saws, or you're sharpening your own saw if you're competing with yourself, even if it's an individual sport. So that was something that just dropped in for me as you were talking. But yeah, to answer your question about like how I came up with the content, I kind of went back and forth about it. And this, the timing was also interesting because, when the chapter was originally due, like the first draft, my mom was in a life-threatening accident. So I was trying to write the chapter and also focus on what was going on with her. And she was actually across the country and she was airlifted. So my mind was all over the place. But one of the things I kept coming back to is like, you know, everything in my life is like, I can handle everything that's given to me. And so that kind of led into what I started writing about, which was like really tapping into, you know, your true north. And the way that I like to kind of think of that is like by spirit and spirit and love guidance, and that kind of thing. And I know everyone has different relationships with their sport, and some are fraught, and, you know, and then they go up and down and things like that. But, for me, just that spirit of love and like everything that sport gave me, in terms of like feeling like I have my life. I mean, I still have asthma medication that I'm taking, but obviously like I can breathe, I can run marathons, I can do triathlons. And so just having that theme and that thread of love that kind of flows through everything. That was what I started talking about. And I was like, this is probably going to be really out there for some people, but like, this is what I'm going to say. So that's kind of how I came up with it.
You know, I think, like you're talking about the bringing together of the part and competing against yourself. But I like what Sarah was even discussing earlier about when do we know what is that thin line of when it becomes detrimental or when it becomes self-sabotage, or I think also of how do we handle or deal with circumstances or situations when it comes to dealing with other people, because with this, I call it the sports complex of mindset. You know, I was just talking, I heard a gentleman talking about this yesterday on the interview where he was talking about it. He had to watch himself as a dad because he started being crappy as a dad. And the reason he was saying he was crazy, not that he didn't love his kid, but he was a single parent, ex-Marine, athlete, you know, ran track the whole nine. But it's like he sucked because he was great, quote unquote, as the man, but he sucked as the woman component to it, or being intimate towards certain things. He didn't give the dual approach of like, hey, I can be masculine, but also I can show love. You know, that doesn't go against masculinity because I'm showing love to my kids. And you got to understand this. You can't put a 40-year-old head on a 4-year-old body. So you just telling people because you're used to your sports mentality, like just kill, suck it up, get in there, run it. It don't matter if you tore a tendon, you know, suck it up. Let me put some Bengay on your leg, slap it together, tighten you up a little bit, get back in the game. And so when I hear you all sharing it, I think it's freeing to some of the people who are listening to this to understand that it's okay. It's okay to be zealous, to go. It's okay to be locked in. It's okay to have the Mamba mentality, so to speak, when it comes to making sure you focus on accomplishing goals. But also realize too that it's okay to get help. It's okay to seek counseling. It's okay to celebrate, because that's something that I fought with. It's not celebrating wins. Hey, it's about Darren Roberts, University of Texas, wrote a book called Call and Audible, of those micro wins, understanding the components of that, instead of downing yourself. So you never give yourself the benefit because you're thinking about the next target, the next goal. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to take your eye off the ball, so to speak, but you can celebrate that. And you don't want to be a pain to everybody else in your life because you're so competitive and you think they need to be on the same level with you for as being competitive or whatnot. And so, you know, Cody, what about you, man? How was it for you for us to creating the content? You got businesses, you got a life, you're doing things in the community. So what was the process for you creating the content? What were some of your hacks?
The actual content creation wasn't as hard as obviously getting it done, right? So there were revisions. I tried to hit pillars that I wanted to cover, right? I didn't know at first. I was like, do I explain my background? Am I explain like where are we starting in this story that I think people would actually find value in? But it's not only finding value because people kind of want to read about somebody that they give a shit about, for lack of a better term, you know? So with this being my first experience, I kind of went and I looked at other books, read other books, and I was like, all right, cool. This is the route that I want to take on it. And then a lot of it was me going back and looking at the things that have happened in my life, and not from the perspective of hindsight's 2020, where, all right, how can I think about this now? But more along the lines of how did a lot of the things that I've done and whatnot in my life, where was I in that mental space at that point, you know? So it did take a little bit of mental effort, if you will, to get me into that headspace. But outside that, the writing came a little bit more naturally. I'm not a writer by any means. But we know a lot about ourselves, you know? And so working with your team on the revisions, that was great. They asked to extrapolate on a lot of things. They asked us to come back and look at, all right, tell me as if I'm not in your head, you know? And so that was great because sometimes, especially, I mean, this wouldn't be considered lengthy by any means, but it'd be the longest piece that I've written. Sometimes you overlook some of the steps that got you through this thought because you've been thinking it your whole life or since it's happened. So yeah, that's kind of been the process.
That's awesome, Cody. You brought up something, Cody, that I think is very important. And don't miss that hack for those who are looking at creating content. And we share that with people, but Cody just went to it naturally. Of reading up, if you want to become a better writer, read more books. I mean, that's a hack. I mean, that's the kind of catch 22. If you're looking at, and then what was able to come out of that, derive out of that, was Cody was able to see, okay, this is the style that works for me. It's different type of styles out there. So you can look at someone when it comes to, okay, how does this person bat? How does this person pitch? What is the unique running style? What is this person's psychology for the 10K that they're running? They're not just running it like they're running, a 100-meter dash, but what is the approach? So regardless of what it is, you apply what you learn in sports too as well, of study, R&D for the business arena, research and development. Put that work in, and then all of a sudden you can say, okay, hey, do I want to have a little Malcolm Gladwell-ish type vibe that's going on? Do I want to create a, Jerome Dickey type vibe? And I'm going to have a Love Jones vibe, whatever that favorite author that you are, do that. And also for those who are thinking about creating content, nothing against it, but you might not be Ernest Hemingway. Yeah, it's good to have a good Cuban cigar and everything and have something to drink and Havana Cuba and look out a window at the ocean to create your content. But you might be facing a situation like Erica where life happens. And she's dealing with a situation across the country with her mother, or you got companies that you're running, or it's just, or sometimes you might just deal with a pandemic. Some of us have lived through that. You can't put that on your 5 and 10-year plan, but you still get it done anyway. So thank you for those hacks, Cody. I really appreciate that. Sarah, what was the process like for you? What were some of the things that you did to be able to create the content?
Well, I don't know that I had any hacks or anything. I mean, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I kind of have had some of the content of the chapter in mind for a long time, wanting to kind of get that on paper. A couple of the instances that I talk about in the chapter, the hardest part for me, I think, was trying to pare it down. I knew right away that I wanted to tell the story from start to finish, that I wanted to talk about how I became the skating yogi, how skating informed my life, what role it played, and how I came to yoga, and then how I merged the two. Like, I knew that all along, that was the angle that I wanted to take. And so the hard part was not only going back and reliving some of the painful moments as I wrote about them, but also trying to make sure I fit it within the limit, because it's, over 40 years of a life that you're paring down into a very small chapter. So that was kind of tough for me. And I think that, from the beginning, I wanted it to be kind of a cathartic experience for me, and it did end up being that. And so at the end, what I realized was, how I kind of closed the chapter, is just mentioning that, I had been stuck in anger for a really long time at the sport, and at some people that I felt really caused a lot of harm to a lot of people around me. And as part of the process of writing the chapter, I came to the conclusion that when you're in an institution such as figure skating or whatever other sport you're in, or whatever other institution, in the end, the people that you are around, we're all just products of our own traumas, and we're all products of our own backgrounds. And if they grew up with the same coaching techniques that they passed on to me, then you kind of have to look at that and say, okay, they were wrong. And obviously, if there's something criminal, there needs to be punitive action taken. But if it's not necessarily criminal, but just harmful, then you got to move on, and you can't stay angry forever. And you have to recognize that they're products of an institution and a human race as well. And then we just have to learn from those mistakes and move forward and educate. And that's part of what I'm trying to do.
Hey, when I hear that, Sarah, I mean, I think that's a part, especially with a co-author book, that those have to understand. Let me share this with people, and this goes right along with what Sarah is sharing. You hear people, if you do a book if you do a solo project, you'll hear people say everyone has a book in them. That's partially true. Most people have books, plural, in them. So now when you condense that into a co-authoring project where you're writing a chapter and you're trying to tell the full story, you're really going to have to work on that, because for the sake of time and not being too lengthy and to be able to do it. So that's some development and a hack right there. It's just thinking of like, okay, how can I convey this in a bite-sized piece? Like she brought up earlier, over 40 years or whatnot, condense it to where people can have a full clip or a highlight film, so to speak, that gets them to the point where I want them to be able to at least be able to relate or have relevance of whatnot, of what I'm sharing or whatnot, so they get an understanding. But also, I want to bring back to those who are dealing with some trauma or dealing with, understand this: your pain is your product. Let me say that again. Your pain is your product. I think that so many of us are being wasteful. Now, we understand it with cutting the lights off. We understand it with the paper towel and the tissue that we get, the restaurants we go to. But when it comes to our pain, we have been taught in error that we think that we're supposed to hoard pain, that we are not supposed to release it. And so what we end up doing is embodying some of the same behaviors that we say that we hate. So that's why you can be oppressed, then you become an oppressor without you even knowing it. Because, if you're not aware of it, you will start pouring it out into other relationships without you even knowing. You'll be actually creating resentment towards people, and you're thinking like you don't even know that you just wearing it on your face, and you don't even like, I don't know why that person was looking at me that way, because you was looking at them that way. And so without you even knowing it. So I want those out there to understand, to free yourself of that, because it was powerful what Sarah just shared with us. Because it's some who coached us, it's some who parented us, that they gave you what they had. And so, yeah, hindsight is 20/20 vision for you, but it's really, I'm not, like you said, we're not talking about people who did criminal acts. I'm not talking about that right now. I believe that needs to be dealt with the proper way or whatnot. I'm not talking about that component, but I'm just saying some thought processes that we have data now. We have things testing. We got case studies that's showing stuff that other people didn't have. So they're telling you, they're regurgitating what the person told them. So whoever taught you or whoever coached you, you're really not getting that 80s coaching or 90s coaching. You're really getting 70s or 60s coaching. Some people 50s coaching, depending on how old the coach was and who that person mindset, who taught them. They're just giving you the same thing. So I think that's freeing for us, because I think athletics deals with life. So when we talk about forever athlete, this is really life that we're talking about here. Everything is transferable. You can look at it and say like, man, I was cracking jokes on the bus about the coaches, and I remember being in the weight room, but now I'm finding myself saying these same quotes now. I'm seeing things that are pulling me out of a tough situation. Or if somebody, I'm using a football analogy, but if somebody jumps off sides, everybody got punished. Everybody had to go back yards. Everybody got penalized. Or if you had to do extra running or whatnot because somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do, you didn't take it personal. So now when you're in the work environment, you're able to extend that grace. You're able to be empathetic with people, because at the end of the day, we can win together. So Sarah, I love that you shared that, because I know some people who are listening to this. No, it's not right. You might didn't like how somebody screamed at you. You didn't like how they embarrassed you in front of everybody. I think we all have stories of certain things that unfortunately that we've experienced or know someone who's experienced. But I think that this is a place with Forever Athlete of healing, of letting you know that we don't have to allow our past to dictate our future. So I appreciate you sharing that. And before we close it out, because there will be information in the show notes about this, there will be the actual official virtual book launch that I share details about. But I want you all to share with people, how can they find out more about what you're doing, about your businesses, about your services? I want you all to share that information right now, if you don't mind. So let's go ahead and start with you, Sarah. then we'll go to Erica, and then we'll close it out with Cody.
So the easiest way to find me is on my website, which is theskatingyogi.com. And I have a blog that talks about some of the pillars that I teach in terms of not just the yoga that I teach, but basically my philosophy in different areas that I think are important for helping athletes stay whole in their sports journey and not lose their true identity. So besides the yoga, I coach figure skating, but that's kind of a smaller subset. But so on the website, you can find my blog, find the book, find how to reach me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Erica.
Yeah, thank you. Probably the easiest, the thing that's less of a mouthful is just to find me on Instagram, which is just Erica Faye. And it's with Erica with a K and just a K, no C. Sometimes people add extra consonants in there. It's just like, I don't know what those are for, but yeah. So, and my company name is Maximum Achievement Coaching. So Maximum Achievement Coaching is the website. But yeah, so I work with groups and individuals, and just actually started working with Athlete Soul to support coaches. As you were starting to talk about that, I was getting sparked into another topic of conversation, but yeah, there's lots of support I think that we can also provide for coaches too. So, but right now, probably the best way is just on Instagram at Erica Faye, and message me, and I will be sure to get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Also, Cody, man, how can they connect with you, bro?
Yeah, connecting with me is pretty simple. All of my channels are generally like the Cody Allen. Website is also the Cody Allen. I'm constantly putting content out there in this space, definitely as you continue in athletics. But yeah, I'm happy to connect with anybody at all, especially I have a podcast called Fill the Gap. That's like FTG Pod on Instagram. But we're constantly putting out and asking for guests to come on as well too. So yeah, that'd be the easiest way.
Hey, I followed their advice or whatnot. So I'm following them on Insta or whatnot. So I was doing that while we was talking. So I'm finding everybody lining up. And so I want to just be able to make sure that we understand this, that what you heard here are life principles. Like, I don't want somebody to overthink this. Like, don't go super deep. Don't go, well, I'm not a figure skater, and I weigh this much, and no, I don't even know how to swim, and I don't have abs like Cody. So you get to going into this competition thing, and if you're not careful, you will miss the nuggets that were shared. You will miss how this can help you with a situation that you're going through in your marriage with your blended family. You can miss how you were furloughed and you're starting over, and how what was shared here is beneficial. You can miss that all of a sudden you raise a set of kids and now you're taking care of your grandkids, and you see yourself at this age and you're dealing with some new challenges. Or some of us, just like with Erica, where you might have parents and we're dealing with our parents at a stage that we hadn't dealt with our parents with before, where our parents are needing our assistance along with our family and the other responsibilities and the dreams and the goals that we have. So before we get this closed out, I just want those who are listening to this, please don't miss what Sarah and Erica and Cody has shared today, because I think it can help you whether you ever played sports or not. These are life lessons that you can glean from that will allow for you to go to the next level, or to be able to pick yourself up from where you are, or be able to get around a cohort of individuals like this that let you know that, hey, it's teamwork that allows for the dream work. And that is you are not alone. You're not by yourself. There are others who have been through some challenges just like you, who are rooting for you to win in life. Whatever that thing is for you, they're rooting for you to win. And I want to just invite everyone, if you could, you can go to self-publish the letter N 30days.com/events to be able to be a part of the event on June 14 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You will be able to hear from Erica and Sarah and Cody and the host of the rest of the authors or whatnot, and Corey himself, Corey Kemp will be in the building himself, where they'll be able to go deeper into the process, the things that help bring this book to life, and also just to be able to be encouraged and to be able to network with amazing human beings. So the event is totally free. So let me just address that. So it's not an elephant in the room. So you're looking at somebody patting their pocket like, Darren, have you seen gas? Yes, I understand. The event is free. We just want to invite you to come in. If you could just subscribe or register, we would love to be able to connect you, have some giveaways, some things we're able to give you access. That's why we're just trying to get a head count. But other than that, I just want to give a parting piece of advice to you all before we close it out. So let's start with you, Sarah, and Erica will go with you, and then Cody will close it out. Parting piece of advice for those who are tuned in.
I think it's the advice that I gave you a few minutes ago. It's not about the competition. Just follow your own journey, follow your own path.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Erica.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was just thinking about as you were talking about parting wisdom is when you're in pain or if you're feeling like you're struggling, take your mind off of yourself and look at how you can help somebody else. It'll shift your energy. It'll make you have a different experience. So that's something that I've been continuing to work with, and it's a powerful move. So if you're in pain, ask, how can I be of service?
Thank you, Erica. Cody, parting piece of advice, my brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, and it's just that being super honest with yourself about the effort that you're putting in, the results that came from whatever happened to you in your life. Because if you are not honest with yourself about how you got to a particular place, there's no way to rectify the situation. So a lot of times I spent a lot of my life, for lack of a better term, lying to myself about how I got to a certain place. So then I go to try to fix something with misinformation. So be extremely honest with a certain situation, be extremely honest with yourself, and you can at least give yourself the roadmap to fix anything that you need in your life.
See, that's how y'all gonna do us. That's how y'all gonna do us. The parting piece of advice, man. I feel like I'm coming out the locker room or whatnot, coming through a coliseum. We're ready to go and play. So I thank you all for sharing that. That's definitely helpful for all of us. You know, don't go to the doctor and you're saying something wrong with your big toe, but it's actually your shoulders. You're wasting a bunch of time. So let's take advice from those that we've heard from. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Cody, for coming on today. And I want to thank all those who've been able to come in and share. The comment by Rob Youngblood, the others who have put hearts, those who've shown love, those who will be watching the rebroadcast. We want to send love to you all too as well. But remember, June 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can go to self-publish, the letter n30days.com/events to be able to register for the free event for the virtual conference for Forever Athlete. Until next time, remember that this is the year for your new book. Be blessed and be great. And I'm out.